Yeah.
Hi there, welcome along to Outdoor Gear Chat. We're here for episode 48, the flashing by at the moment, and this is how waterproof fabrics keep you dry. I'm getting my teeth in. I'm joined by Kathy as always. Hello.
Hi, Wayne. I am super excited. We're halfway through our 3-show special and talking about all the new technologies that are coming through in the fabric world of waterproof fabrics at the moment. It really is a very, very, very exciting time, especially if you're like a nerdy geek like me and into kit. But more importantly, if you've been out today in your waterproof and got wet through, or you have thought, oh, this jacket is not working as good as it used to, there's a reason why, and it might not be failing. And we're here to talk about that in more depth. So we have a very special guest with us today, from one of the most established outdoor brands within the UK market. This is Mountain Equipment, and we're very, very pleased to have with us today Laura Howe, a fabric technologist. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Oh, thank you very much. That was quite the introduction. I feel all shy now, actually.
It's true. We love this geekery, though, Laura. Yeah. It's absolutely brilliant, and the amazing people that are involved in outdoor kit that we're getting to speak to is just something else, isn't it, Kathy? It really. And I know Kathy gets. You can see the geekery on her face. Look at it. Bless her. Sorry, those listening can't, but you can if you go and watch on YouTube. So yeah, thanks for joining us. It's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, it's like a 7-hour marathon podcast. Is that all right? So that's you knew that, didn't you? So
have
that
we got time to go get a snack? Or...
Yeah. So we can cram it all into 7 hours. Sorry, I'm wittering now. Do you want? Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Would you mind just explaining to everyone what a fabric technologist is and a little bit about your Mountain Equipment?
Yeah. So I'll start with Mountain Equipment. For those that don't know, they started in around 1961, and they used to operate out of a little shed in Glossop. And over the years, we've sort of migrated a few miles down the road, and we're in Hyde now in East Manchester. Yeah, like you say, very prestigious British outdoor brand. Been involved in a lot of sort of really cool first ascents, the first ascent of Everest without oxygen. Really cool things like the North Face of Changabang, the Mizuno Ridge, more recently like Latok 1, with all athletes wearing our kit dating all the way back. And it's just, it's a really impressive company to work for. We're quite a small team. I think people probably think we're bigger than we are. There's not loads of us, which makes it's really nice. Everyone's really, really skilled at their individual jobs. Yeah, it's brilliant. And as far as my job goes, so I'm the fabric technologist, and I operate across all the sectors of Mountain Equipment, so the apparel and the equipment. So that's all the packs, the sleeping bags, the gloves, as well as all the apparel. And yeah, my job's really, really broad. So I'm involved right at the start with sort of really early innovation chats about cool things that we could do in the future, through then to sort of developing fabrics for the season that we're working on. I get given briefs, and I'll sort of go out and work to those briefs and source things for particular projects. Then sort of coming on to testing, both in the lab and user testing. That's all my remit as well. And then colour, so making the colour happen in all the different fabrics, and quality control right at the end as well, making sure all the fabrics are as they should be before they get made into stuff. So that's sort of me in a nutshell, I suppose. And also, as you've spoken to Debbie about, a huge part of it is compliance now, making sure that everything is compliant, that, we're okay to sell it in certain countries, all of this, making sure we're meeting legislation. That's a part of my job that's grown and grown over the last couple of years that sort of wasn't there before. Yeah.
And is that a bit about traceability and stuff like that as well as?
A little bit, yeah. Traceability is kind of a little bit different, and we can only sort of do it with certain things. And I obviously do have a lot of help with this. We have our own sustainability team, who do quite a lot of it. But when it comes to like a fabric point of view and making sure that the information that we're getting from the mills is all correct, and that all kind of comes through me. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, yeah, cool, thank you. And yeah, so I guess we're here to talk about like waterproofs and the fabrics, and yeah, and I guess the starting point for this, Kathy, was about the changes that are coming to for various reasons, and all those 3-letter acronyms that we've got. Is it PFAs? Was that right? And yeah, and loads of them beginning with P, and category
Yeah.
C6 and C8 and so on. So yeah, just I guess tell us a little bit from your perspective about maybe where that's come from, or why, or why, or how things have changed. Sorry, to become a bit more sustainable, or a bit kinder to the environment.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a slow growing thing over quite a few years, to be honest. I know I think we're seeing a lot more of it now, but I think you look back maybe, at least 5 years, people have been bringing things in waterproof technology that has been air quotes more sustainable, and things like this. We're looking, recycled face fabrics, recycled backers. Maybe we've seen quite a lot of backers on waterproof fabrics that are solution dyed, for example. So they're using less water to dye them, because backers are normally always grey on almost everyone's waterproof. So it's easier to do that type of dyeing when you're just using one colour. Other things we've seen, obviously, the biggest shift in the last sort of 10 years was everything used to be covered in C8. We weren't allowed to use that anymore, so everything moved to C6. And now we're going to start seeing a phase out of that. Everyone's going to be using C0. So that's probably one of the biggest changes we'll see. But also changes in sort of choices of fabrics. I think we've seen quite a big introduction of mono materials, if you will. So like people using polyester faces with polyester membranes, polyester backers. So you've got this sort of end of life recyclability story that you can add into things. Also just choice of fabrics for durability of things. I think there's been a lot of advancement in that area. And yeah, obviously we've seen big shifts recently with Gore's change of membrane to their new EPE membrane. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it more in a minute, but that cracks open a whole other world of things as well.
It
Yeah.
certainly does. I'm just going to go back and just explain to our listeners and watchers, so that a backer on a waterproof garment is actually the fabric you can see on the inside. If it's not a coated, if it's a laminated waterproof, and a laminated waterproof would generally be considered a more durable garment, because if it's got a backer on the inside, that protects the inside of the waterproof membrane as well. So if you've got layers on, for example, the classic being a bra strap, and if you've got one of the little ladders on your bra strap and you've got fabrics rubbing on that, it could damage the if it was a coating, it would be less durable than a lined or a laminated waterproof. So a backer fabric, as you say, they're always grey.
They're always grey. Yeah, you'll also find that they'll make a jacket a lot more comfortable, because they can sort of take on a bit of that moisture from your body, so you're not left feeling clammy.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. And just also we did touch on the C8, C6 and moving down to C0 in our previous podcast as well. But just to explain to customers that is actually talking about the chemicals within the durable water repellent treatment that's on the outside of the jacket. So that goes on the coloured fabric that you see on the outside of the jacket, which isn't always the waterproof part.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a surface treatment. So yeah, it's on the surface of the fabric.
Yeah. And C8, the longer chain molecule, being the evil chemical, for want of a better word. It's a chemical, a fluorocarbon that does not break down. It's very solid. That's why it's been used, and it works so effectively at allowing your jacket to bead for years. You can own an old jacket for 20 years, take it out, and it still beads, because that chemical compound is so stable. And then moving down to a C6 chemical compound and a lower number, that chain gets shorter, and that's when you see your jacket wetting out more frequently, and needing to wash and reproof your garment more frequently. So it is, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, but there's some customers get totally into it, when you're talking about it in the shop, and other customers get the
Less so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I just want the blue one.
Yeah.
And just picking up on the C0 thing then, Laura. So yeah, we were talking to Debbie from Rab earlier on about the move from C8 to C6, and you just mentioned there. And is it just going to jump straight to C0, or is it going to go like 4-2-0 or something like that?
No, straight to 0. There's not one in between.
Wow.
So it will go straight from C6 to C0. Yeah. No, there'll be nothing in between. But in terms of it, it's not, it'll be phased. Most people are already kind of using it. So you're not going to see this sort of big, everything's C0 now. It's, yeah.
Okay. And then, you just mentioned about Gore and the was it EFE, sorry, EP?
EPE.
And so, is that like a new technology, if you will, that's part of that change then? Is that moving from C8 to C6 for using that language again?
So C8's been banned for quite a few years now, so you won't see that anywhere in the outdoor industry. But so the big change in Gore is, so everyone was familiar with their ePTFE membrane, which is the membrane they've been running for the last, 10, 20 years, probably longer. But anyway, they have to use some fluorocarbons within that membrane to make it work effectively, essentially. So with a lot of changes in legislation and sort of EU green claims coming in, that's making it apparent that we're not going to be able to use these chemicals forever, and we shouldn't be using these chemicals forever. Gore have obviously embarked on a big development process to make a new membrane that's just as good, that doesn't use those, and the result was EPE. So it's basically made from a different polymer base now. They use a slightly different polymer to make it, and it means they don't have to use fluorocarbons to make it work effectively, which obviously brilliant. So yeah, that's the new generation of Gore EPE.
I think the PTFE, the original PTFE membrane, stood for, I got to get this right, it's a long time since I've used this terminology, but per-tetrafluoroethylene, which in PTFE, if you're a plumber, use PTFE tape. If you're a guitarist, PTFE guitar strings. If you are a heart surgeon, you use PTFE. I can't remember what the technical is. It stent, or they're used in in the medical industry. So it's the closest synthetic version of human skin that was ever created, but unfortunately human skin is extremely good at disappearing off into the environment, and PTFE isn't. So that's changed now to EPE, which is polyethylene, isn't it? I think so.
Expanded polyethylene,
Expanded so basically just in the name there's a whole lot less of it, so that's got to be a good thing for the environment, hasn't it?
And another big thing that's come with that change is pretty much all of Gore's fabrics now will come with a C0 surface DWR. A lot of them were still knocking around with a C6 because you buy a Gore-Tex jacket, you want it to keep you dry. So and not that C0s won't, but obviously the C6 is much more stable, and that's what they've been using until now. Whereas we see all of the sort of catalogue items now that we can get from Gore will all have a C0 surface DWR as well. So they've sort of made both changes at once. For most of their items.
It's really interesting terminology, isn't it? Because we're sort of talking about the chemicals on the outside as part of the jacket and then keeping dry, and it's actually that it's not the chemical on the outside, and this is what I kind of keep having to explain to customers and stuff. It's not the chemical on the outside of the jacket that's keeping you dry, it's the membrane on the inside, because water can't physically penetrate that membrane if the garment is properly waterproof. There's garments out on the market that will keep water out, but they do that mechanically. So products like Paramo, for example, Buffalo. But if you knelt down in a pool of water or sat down in a pool of water, water would come through because those fabrics haven't got a physical barrier in them to keep the water out. And that's also where, sort of going on to hydrostatic head that we've mentioned, is an interesting measurement, because that will give you the measurement of how much water a fabric will keep out. But if that fabric has been cut up and beautifully patterned with curved seams and is designed to fit around you, then there's a lot of areas where the fabric is joined, and those, no matter how beautifully seamed, and it's very difficult to seam seal a garment, I had to go once.
Yeah.
That's an area where water could ingress. So a hydrostatic head is perfect for measuring, for example, a tent ground sheet, which is just a big oblong of fabric. But perhaps less relevant as a single metric to measure how a waterproof will keep you dry, because it's also in the design as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting one, this, because I think numbers have become a really crucial tool for people selling jackets, which you can totally understand. You know, the higher the number, the better it is. It's a really easy thing to get your head around. But like you say, there's so much more to it. It's I know you've spoken to Matt previously on an earlier episode, and one of his
Dr. Down
things to say, Dr. Down, one of his favorite sort of things to say is you can make a very good waterproof jacket out of not very good fabrics, or you can make a very bad waterproof jacket out of very good fabrics. It's all, a lot of it is down to the construction, and that is something that, you know, I'll blow our own trumpet a little bit. Our shell techs are incredible. We have an incredible relationship with our shell factory, and our construction, we take a lot of time over our construction and thinking about how we're going to design things and how we're going to make things to make sure that the fabrics can really do everything that they need to do. Like you say, you choose an amazing fabric, but then if you don't seam seal your seams, or you don't have storm flaps on your pockets, or your zips aren't waterproof, that jacket's not going to keep you dry. So yeah, there is a lot more to it than that. And the hydrostatic head thing is really interesting as well, because like you were saying, the surface DWR sort of, that's not what makes a fabric waterproof, like you were saying, Kathy. It kind of helps the membrane do its job.
Sorry guys, I really apologize. I've just had a delivery driver. I will be back with you shortly.
No worries. Should we carry on?
I think maybe we'll just pause and
Pause. Okay.
Yeah, pause, and I don't think it should be long. There she is.
Oh, so sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Guaranteed. Anyway,
I've been waiting for someone to open this door the whole time I've been in here, so don't worry. Where was that? Oh yeah, so for the membrane to do its job, it needs to be able to breathe, and what the DWR on the surface does is beads that water really nicely, stops it from saturating your face fabric, and therefore allows the membrane to breathe. As soon as your face fabric sort of wets out, the sort of term that you call it, when it starts to soak in and your sort of jacket starts to change colour, your membrane can't breathe anymore. It really can't do what it's made to do. So yeah, the DWR really is sort of stopping that from happening. It's like an extra layer of protection, if you will. That's not what's making your jacket waterproof. It's your membrane that's doing all the work. Yeah, I think that explains it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because it's the repellency that allows the jacket to perform at its optimum, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we touched on this in our previous podcast, that allowing the sweat from your body or the moisture to transfer through basically your layers. And I think probably relearning how to layer effectively underneath a waterproof is actually going to become more and more important.
Yeah,
we've all been able to become a little bit lazy because of the quality and the longevity of the DWRs on our waterproofs over the years, but with them needing to be replenished more frequently, we're also going to have to really think about how we use the layers underneath our garments, our outer garments, to get that wicking, if you like, for want of a better word, that moisture moving from layer to layer to layer to then be able to pass out through the jacket. And there's a sort of a great analogy that I often use with customers. If you're walking uphill, doesn't matter what the weather's doing, if you're sweating on your brow, your skin can't evaporate the moisture fast enough that your body's generating. So if you've got 2 layers plus a waterproof on a warm wet day, which is our lovely British climate, on a very regular basis, then you have a real issue there. You know, you're not going to be able to, your garments can't physically transport that moisture away from you. So you're going to need to adapt your comfort level, and the easiest way of doing that is removing or adding layers.
Yeah,
Which
100%.
we talk about in episode 2.
Yeah.
Is it that long ago?
just
Blimey.
add into
Sorry,
that
Laura.
a little bit. I think one thing that my partner always says to me on the hill, he always says, be bothered. You know, if you're too hot, take a layer off.
Yeah.
If you're too cold, put a layer on. And I think, yeah, that probably will become a bit more evident. You know, if you're sweating inside your jacket, you're going to start to feel wet. There's no two ways about it. You know, that doesn't mean that the rain's getting you wet. It's because you're too hot and that condensate's making you wet. And one thing we'll get quite a lot is people wearing like cotton t-shirts underneath their waterproofs and wondering why they're getting wet. And, you know, as soon as cotton gets wet, if it's got wet a tiny bit because it's hanging out the bottom of your jacket, or if you've got your jacket a little bit zipped open and it's got wet in that sort of triangle on your chest, that's just going to spread over your whole t-shirt because that's how cotton works.
Yeah.
And suddenly your whole t-shirt's going to be wet. And yeah, you might think it's because of your jacket, but it's probably not. And I think this comes back to the design again a bit as well, is you know, perhaps venting is going to become a bit more important, you know, being able to open your pit zips or, you know, open your pockets, get a bit more airflow through to sort of keep your jacket, keep the air flowing through it and keeping it nice and dry. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting insight, though, that one, isn't it? As far as what, you know, well, your purchasing decision, I guess, is that has it got vents at all, I suppose, isn't it? But
yeah, I think there's a time and a place for them, isn't there? If you know you're going to be working really hard, then why wouldn't you have some vents to sort of make your life a little bit easier? But if you're going to be getting smashed in the face by spindrift and stuff all day, then maybe you don't want them. But yeah.
It's dead interesting. Yeah, I've got some like outdoor trousers on at the moment that have got vents, like zip vents on the side, and I find they're just invaluable. Like, to be especially in the circumstances, Kathy, that you're just describing. You know, where it's a bit minging outside, but it's actually pretty warm as well. And that unzipping them to get that airflow as you describe, Laura, is superb.
Yeah.
So just give us some more of the geekery, I guess. So how do you decide? How do you determine what fabrics are used in which garments and like where they're placed on your body? And Kathy, I guess you were talking about bra straps just then as well, and that the importance of certain materials there. And I guess the reverse is the same, isn't it? As far as having a rucksack on your shoulders, and so how do you decide that?
Yeah, well, in terms of how we decide what to use on certain jackets, that'll normally come from a sort of an end goal of what we want that jacket to do. So it sort of goes a little bit backwards. So Malcolm, our product manager, he'll sort of come up with the fabric briefs and be like, oh, we're going to design a new alpine jacket, for example. We want it to be tough, but we need it to be really lightweight. That might be it for my brief, and off I go. Settle in different things to find, and we'll sort of narrow it down through a process of lab testing. Some things will get knocked out purely on hand feel, how they look. And then we might also make up some jackets to get out on our athletes or on the staff at Plaza Brennan, something like that, give it a really good bashing. So there's a lot of things that go into it as to how we choose what goes on each jacket. And then, we might, obviously, we've got some jackets that might have two different fabrics. Quite commonly, we'll have a heavier fabric over the shoulders and sort of down the back of the sleeves or at the sort of lower back. That's purely a durability thing. It's to prevent your jacket getting really scragged up by your rucksack. So we have a heavier denier over the shoulders to prevent you from your rucksack straps and from your hip belts. So it'd be things like that, really. And sometimes it is optics. Sometimes we might want a sort of a blend of ripstops and planes, sort of get that interest.
What does that mean? Yeah. Sorry, Laura, what's a ripstop and a plane? Go on.
Oh, okay. So ripstop fabric, I'm sure you'll have all seen one, a little fabric that looks like it's got sort of grid pattern on it, like little squares. That's a ripstop. So that's woven in a way that it sort of has yarns running in that sort of grid pattern, so that if it did tear, it would stop. It's named after its name.
The name gives away.
It does give it away. So the aim of that is that if you did tear your jacket, it would only ever tear so far because it would hit one of those yarns and stop. And I think we see that quite a lot in the outdoor industry. You know, down jackets are normally always ripstops. So yes, like I say, sometimes it can be a sort of not an optical thing like that as well. And it can also come down to what different types of we might use different types of membranes on different things. Yeah, weights, how heavy do we need it to be? You know, if we're doing something for the mountain rescue range as opposed to like our normal range, we're going to be using something a lot tougher, a lot heavier than we are if we're going to be making something for, yeah, like a really light alpine jacket or something like that.
I think it's really interesting to pick up on the fact that you guys have a really good relationship with the National Outdoor Centre at Plas Brenin in North Wales, which of course is just down the road from our Capel Curig shop.
Yeah.
So we spend quite a lot of time there, and we also have a lot of the instructors come in on a very regular basis, and also their clients too. But that field of testing is pretty relentless. I mean, everybody knows if you're working 5 days a week on the hill, in North Welsh conditions, that's a very harsh environment to
it's pretty amazing. Someone can put like 3 years worth of wear into a jacket in like 6 months, which is crazy, but it was obviously brilliant for us. And yeah, it's such a valuable partnership to be able to do that.
And that amount of testing as well, you know, that goes into each garment, it's quite easy if a customer's coming into the shop to see just a wall of jackets, and just to use the price as a guide, and they're all very expensive. They are an investment, but a huge amount of effort and passion has gone into making sure that those jackets are right for their end use, and they're there on the shelf for customers to try on, and we often need to ask a lot of questions as retailers when people come in to make sure that we can guide them towards trying on the right items, and they're not going to spend a huge amount on a jacket that they've read a great review on, but actually that might be not ideal for the kind of environments that they're planning on going out into, or maybe there's something that it might be super lightweight and actually they're wanting something or going to need something that's much more durable that can take a heavy pack. For example, if they're backpacking, it's all well having a fantastic lightweight jacket, but there has to be an understanding that there's always a compromise between lightweight and durability. And I know that's how you build that into some of your garments already, and it's great for us to be able to explain that. And when you unzip a jacket and turn it inside out, you can sometimes see from the inside more immediately the differences in the fabrics that have been used and why. But sometimes on the outside as well, there's color changes on the darker fabrics, and it's built into the design, so you can immediately see that. I think probably using the term face fabric, those coloured fabrics on the outside of the garment, that are there to protect the waterproof membrane or the coating. It can be an immediate visual, you know, maybe those shoulders are different colour for a reason, or the panelling around the base of the back. And so you can, when you touch a garment, you can definitely feel the difference in the fabrics. And so there's lots of clues that you can pick up on to make sure that that garment is harder wearing in all the right places that you need it to be, or maybe it's light enough in all those places that you need it to be. If you're out on a running event and you're not carrying a heavy pack, for example, you might want something that squishes down super small and is super lightweight. But if you're about to leave base camp on a 4-day trip up to a mountain summit, then you're going to need something very, very substantial, that's going to protect you in heinous wind and snow conditions, definitely.
And I guess that's what we always say, that's the important part of going into a shop and speaking to experts and getting your level of expertise, Kathy, I guess. And well, of course I'm going to say that, but I really believe it is that you're able to get your hands on stuff. You're able to talk to knowledgeable staff about what you're going to be using that piece of kit for, and where and how and all the rest of it, aren't you? So rather than
and fit as well, you know, Laura's done all of the hard work on making sure the correct fabric is in that garment. The patterning team will then make sure that garment's cut properly for the use that it's going to be used for as well. So for example, sometimes we have folks come in and say, oh no, I don't want that brand. I know their jackets don't fit me, and it's like, well, they actually have 3 cuts within their range.
Yeah.
So you know, things have changed. You might want to just try. And all brands, we're all different shapes and sizes, and every brand cuts differently. And a jacket that's cut for a high alpine or a high altitude environment will be much, much, much bigger to allow for those big down layers underneath, so that they don't get crushed. Then perhaps I'm going to go back to a running jacket again, which would be designed to be super close.
Trimmer,
yeah. And then you've got a real nice sort of general use jackets, and some of those might be cut a little more relaxed around the waist. Some brands will cut longer arms than others. Some will allow for, if you're using them with a winter climbing, for example, and you're using big chunky gloves with wrist gauntlets, they're going to have a different cut to their arm again. So it is really important. It's such a huge investment. You want to look at not just the features on the jacket, but also how that jacket fits around your body shape. And because if it's not comfortable at the end of the day, it's not a great buy.
No, you're not going to have a good time. Exactly.
No, you're going to be swearing at it because it's rucked up in all the wrong places. Or, yeah, maybe you've got it's too short on the
chafing.
Water's going in, and chafing, Wayne, honestly.
Exactly. Bane of my life at times.
About chafing. That's because you insist on doing really stupidly long runs.
Well, like what was once upon a time. Maybe less so now. I've just got to say at this point, it's worth going onto YouTube and watching this just to see Kathy doing the air guitar earlier on. I don't know whether you noticed that, Laura. So if you are just listening, it's worth going onto YouTube and checking that out. Moving on, I guess we talked about like the briefly about the testing of hydrostatic head and so on, and then obviously we're moving into using new fabrics or new treatments of those fabrics. And how are we seeing those respond? Do they respond any differently to the old ones?
Very short answer, no. They're just as good. We've independently tested the new EPE here, and it's brilliant. It's not any worse than old Gore, which is great. That's obviously what Gore wanted to achieve, and they have. But what's interesting about hydrostatic head generally is, like Kathy was saying before, it's a sort of test under pressure. So it's sort of trying to force the water through the fabric. And I think it's always worth bearing in mind that these tests are normally always done on brand new fabric, brand spanking new DWRs, where it's all working at its absolute best. So obviously you're going to get really good results, and it's done in lab conditions. It's done with the correct sort of humidity, the right temperatures, all of that, which can have a massive effect on how a membrane can breathe. It might do really well in one type of environment, and then when it's really cold, it might behave a little bit differently. So hydrostatic head for me is a really interesting one. It's great for me to figure out, oh, well, this fabric's obviously better than this one. That's great. But I do think we're slowly going to move into a world where numbers hopefully are going to be a little bit less important. And like you were saying, Kathy, having a jacket that fits you right and that is right for the thing you're doing is going to become a lot more important. And I say that because this shift in the industry has sort of blown open a market that hasn't really needed any research or development for the last 30 years, because Gore EPTFE did everything that everyone needed. And with the redevelopment of EPE, it's allowed quite a lot of other membrane technologies to sort of come through. And it's a really exciting sort of surge of stuff that's just come out. And there's a lot of new types of membranes made from different polymer bases, things like that will respond differently to certain tests as well. So if we take breathability as an example, I know you asked about hydrostatic head. Sorry, I've gone off on a right tangent.
It's all right. No, it's fine. No.
Breathability, for example, almost everyone tests to a particular standard, and it's called B1. That's the sort of the suffix to it. And that is sort of a method where it's an inverted cup method. So there's a cup of water basically that sits on the fabric. So the surface of the fabric is already saturated in water, which, when we think about it, is not particularly realistic. You're never really going to have that in real life. But that's what we test to, because that's what we've always tested to, and it gets nice high numbers. And so when you see in these stats like 30k on these jackets or whatever, that's what we're referring to. But we've started to see an emergence of membranes that do better at the other test, which is A1, which is the cups the other way around. So you've got space between the fabric and the water, you've got air between the fabric and the water, which is much more realistic to real life, really. You've got that air between your skin and the fabric. And some of these new membranes that are coming through that are made from different things react much better to that test. So whilst they might not look really good on the traditional test, they're much better on this other test. And so I do think we will start to see a bit of a shift on how people perceive waterproofs and how they purchase them and stuff on that sort of basis. And with hydrostatic head as well, you know, a number of 30,000 on hydrostatic head, that's massive. Like a result of 5,000 would be more enough to keep you dry forever. And people, you know, aim for these higher and higher results. And the reason why is because once you've washed your jacket, those results drop a little bit. Each time they'll drop just a little bit. So people aim sky high so that they've got this room for it to drop and sort of build in that durability to it the more and more you wash it. Like I say, 5,000 millimeter hydrostatic head, you could be kneeling on it all day and it wouldn't come through. But you know, we have to sort of build in this durability for when people are going to wash their jackets and they still want them to be performing the way they need them to, essentially. Yeah.
And then I guess reiterating something that we'd spoke about in the previous podcast, but how do you think or what changes are we going to need to make as consumers to like look after our kit, I guess, more widely? What we're gonna have to do?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, you guys are talking to Granger soon, aren't you? So I'm sure they'll talk to you loads more about this. But it's just being a bit more aware about your kit. I mean, people quite often say, you know, you MOT your car, so why aren't you looking after your jacket in the same way that you might have spent 400 or 500 quid on? You just be looking out for it, you know. And I wouldn't say we need to be washing them every time we wear them. That's not the case. It's just being aware of how they're looking. You know, last time you went out, did it start to wet out over your shoulders or something? You know, maybe give it a nice little wash, a tumble dry, spray some Grangers on it. Just being aware of how it's looking every time you're going out, and just starting to look after things a little bit more. I think I certainly know I've got friends that have never washed their waterproof jackets in their life because they didn't know they could. I think there's a bit of work from the brands on sort of education of washing your kit, but I think it's going to become necessary. So I think everyone will become aware of it in the future. And hopefully it just leads to people looking after things and they last much longer, which would be great.
Yeah, great on a number of levels, isn't it? So yeah. Cool. I think it's been an amazing. I was going to say exactly the same. Yeah, I've got so many questions, and it's brilliant to be speaking to somebody who's such a specialist as always. But I think let's say we'll call it there. And thank you, Laura, for your time. That was absolutely amazing, brilliant insight. And I guess the for most consumers, that last bit really strikes a chord with me. Is like looking after your stuff, geez. And again, we said earlier about don't just stuff it in your rucksack, leave it there, and then chuck it in a cupboard and don't look at it for 3 weeks or whatever.
Absolutely.
You know, make sure it's looked after. So thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, Kathy.
No worries. You can find out more at www.climbers-shop.com or www.jbrownoutdooracademy.com.
Awesome.